This is Bruno Bianchi Sarcone from Spainguru.es, and this is the free webinar Spanish Non-Lucrative Visa 2025. And as you can see there, this is the version number 20 of the presentation, so a lot of iterations. And the way I structured the webinar today is a timeline before the application, during the application, and after the approval. We're going to talk about definitions, the consulates and BLS offices. This is the third party that sometimes, most of the time, processes the NLV visa. Tourist and resident status, immigration status for Spain, tax considerations, very important. And then we're going to go through the NLV eligibility and requirements one by one and going in depth into the most important ones. Then during the application, we're going to have a look to the timing and application process in a visual manner. And then after the approval, how you have to arrive to Spain. And of course, if you get your visa granted, and I'm sure you will, and if you want to renew it, all the conditions and requirements, if you want to stay in Spain longer, how you get your long-term residence, even Spanish citizenship, and how you could transition potentially to a work permit. Small disclaimer here, the content of this webinar is for information purposes only and is not legal advice. The requirements listed here are not official. Please check your specific consulates and BLS office requirements if applicable. What is Spainguru? We have been in the sector for more than 10 years, since 2014, and our objective is facilitating the relocation process for English-speaking foreigners to Spain since 2014. And as you can see there, we have nice reviews there, and you are in good hands. If you happen to use Spainguru, you can be sure that it has been tested and passed the test of time. About Spainguru, there's two ways you can use Spainguru. There's a professionals partners, okay? And you have free resources. Let's talk about the partners first. You can find immigration experts that can help you with any immigration process, including the non-lucrative visa, with extensive experience in US and UK consulates and all the rest. You can find tax advisors and financial planners, and I highly recommend you engaging with one and also joining my tax webinars just to have more information on how the general taxation in Spain works before even taking the decision of moving to Spain. You can find resources that you will need anyway, even if you do it yourself, the NLV application. You will need NLV compliant health insurance. You can find them on Spanguru.es, medical certificates from UK and Spanish doctors, sworn translations, for sure you will need those. You can find them on Spanguru. Apostilles services in the US and UK. These are private and sometimes expedited services. Bank accounts, money transfer services, property rentals, mortgages, so many adjacent services or peripheral services that you will need if you decide to move to Spain. More than 100 services, all personally vetted by me. Most of them, I have been recommending them for years. So definitely worth at least looking at them and see what you got there, because you might need them. And as I said, you can also use all the free resources. I have a weekly newsletter that I send every Monday with the top 10 discussions in social media, in the NLV group, and the most watched videos. I have a YouTube channel with 850 videos, one per day, blog with 1,600 articles plus, and as you probably joined already, Facebook groups with a dedicated Spanish non-lucrative visa Facebook group with almost 20,000 members that I highly recommend you joining today. Now, let's start with the timeline of this webinar. Before the application, first of all, what is the Spanish non-lucrative visa? It's a Spanish visa for non-EU citizens who can financially support themselves and who don't need to work in Spain. It is defined by two regulations. One is the law, which is the top regulation, higher in hierarchy, is the Ley Orgánica 4/2000, and then there is the lower regulation of that higher law, which is the regulation or Reglamento de Extranjería, okay? That goes more into detail but has lower hierarchy. What has happened in November? The Congress voted a new Reglamento de Extranjería that will come into effect on May 20th, 2025. So until that date, it is the current or old Reglamento de Extranjería that is applying. And after May 20th is the new text. But the main law didn't change. This is very, very important. And you're gonna hear why later on. Now, consulates in the US, UK, and also Canada. It's very important that you can either apply from the consulate that serves the area where you live legally, where you reside legally, okay? So you cannot apply from any consulate. Or potentially you could also apply if you are from a certain country, okay? For example, you are from Colombia and you live in the USA, you could potentially also apply from a consulate from your country of nationality as well. This is something that I learned recently, actually. Now, here on spainguru.es/Spain non-lucrative visa, you can find the exact areas in which these consulates serve, so you understand which is your consulate. And each of those consulates, I have created a dedicated page where I also aggregate all the content that mentions that specific consulate. And why is this so important? Because every consulate is different. So it's very, very important that you understand the specific rules and what people are going through in your specific consulate. So I aggregate all the information for your specific consulate. And you also have links to the official requirements and BLS offices, etc., etc. So again, worth taking 1 minute to look at it, because as I show here, example, New York Consulate, you have there several first-hand experiences, which I upload every single month. So it is pretty interesting to have everything in one place. Now, most of these consulates, we just mentioned New York, for example, New York still doesn't work with a third party to process the non-lucrative visa, but most of them work with BLS International, which is a Indian company, which has presence in 64 countries and is present in the Indian Stock Exchange. You can see there the price today of their shares if you want to buy and invest in them. But basically, all the United Kingdom consulates and most of the American consulates work with BLS International. So really, you're going to be dealing with them. You're going to hand over or submit your documents at the BLS office. Okay, you're going to have to get an appointment at the BLS office in the city of your consulate. Okay, and you're going to deal with them. Then BLS will internally deal with the consulates and send the documents to the consulate, and they do a little back and forth. Okay, but basically you have to understand whether your consulate is dealing with BLS International for the non-lucrative visa application. Sometimes they deal with BLS only for the Schengen visa, sometimes for both visas. Okay, so make sure you understand that and you read the requirements not only from your consulate in English and Spanish, but also the BLS International requirements. Visa requirements for Spain. Now, entering as a tourist visa eligibility. British, US, Canada, Australia citizens can stay in Spain and other Schengen countries for up to 90 days within a 6-month period without needing a tourist visa. This is called the 90 and 180-day rule. What is the Schengen area? It's an area of 28 European countries that is internally borderless, at least for the sake of passport control. You can travel freely around without getting your passport controlled. Can be exceptions. It could be controlled. For example, people reported during the Olympics in France, there were a lot of passport controls in the internally between France and Spain and other countries. So this could be also exceptional. Some nationalities require a Schengen visa to enter this area as tourists, for example, the Philippines. And then there is the general visa requirements for non-EU citizens who plan to stay more than those 90 days, in particularly in Spain. They must secure a temporary or long-term visa. The non-lucrative visa is a temporary visa or residency. Why we say it's temporary? Because it will grant you typically a 5-year period residency, right? So what is the difference between visa and residency? Because I also do it. We use visa and residency for saying the same, but it's really different. The visa is the paper that goes sticked in your passport that has only a 90-day validity period to enter Spain. But then once you are in Spain, you're officially required to get your non-lucrative residence. The residence is represented by the plastic card with your face. You give your fingerprints at the police station, and that would be the residency. Okay, so really the visa, you use it once, it's valid for 3 months, and then never again. Then you are in Spain under the non-lucrative residence. Okay, but we're going to use non-lucrative visa as if it was residence, but now you understand the two differences. Now, very important. If you're a citizen from a European country or associate countries like Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, as well as their spouses, they are exempt from obtaining this type of visa, okay? They also have to do some paperwork and some procedure to stay in Spain if they want to stay for more than 90 days, but they won't need a non-lucrative visa, okay? The residency options for if you are an EU citizen or a spouse of one, okay, then you would get being a spouse of one, you will get a community family card to reside in Spain, okay? It will give you a work permit. It will be granted for 5 years, and it has much softer requirements than the non-lucrative visa. You don't need to renew it in between those 5 years. So if you have the possibility to obtain an European Union passport, yes, some British people say, for example, I have a possibility to get the Irish passport or potential dual citizens in the US that potentially can get the Italian passport or the Greek passport. Maybe it is interesting to obtain it before even applying for the non-lucrative visa. Now, let's talk about taxes. And as I said, it's very, very important to understand the tax implications of moving to Spain. And the most important concept is tax residence. You become a tax resident in Spain and must pay tax on your global income if any of the following conditions apply. And the most important one, if you spend physically over 183 days in Spain within a calendar year from January 1st to December 31st, and those days don't need to be consecutive. And it doesn't matter your immigration status. You could be tourist, you could be under a lucrative visa, whatever. If your body is in Spain physically, okay, 1 minute, that day counts for tax residency in Spain, and then you would be liable to pay taxes on your worldwide income. Second condition, your main economic activity or primary income source is in Spain, regardless of time spent in the country. And three, your family lives in Spain. Even if you spend less than 183 days in Spain, you could be deemed by the tax authorities to be a Spanish tax resident. And then you have taxes, right? This is a very summarized view of the taxes. Income tax first, deadline on June 30th. Okay, you have to pay taxes on your worldwide income at progressive rates that range from 19% to 47%. There are regional variations. This is very important, allowances, etc. But one of the misconceptions here, one of the $1 million questions, like if I make 100,000 euros income, I would fall in the tax bracket number 5. You can see there on the table on the right, from 60,000 to 300,000 euros, 100K would pay 45%. Is this really true? Not really. You would pay an effective tax rate at around 36%. Okay, so you need to understand how the tax brackets work. I'm going to look at that very quickly in the next slide. Then you have another obligation, which is disclosing your overseas assets, Form 720, and you actually have to do it very soon, on the 31st of May, for asset categories totaling 50,000 euros or more, like bank accounts, for example. If you have 2 bank accounts with 25,000 euros each, the total is 50,000 euros. So for that category, you already have to declare those 2 bank accounts. And this is an information that you provide. You don't pay taxes on it, but it's an information that you provide that then the tax authorities use against you in a way. Then you have wealth tax, which is an annual tax on net assets value at December 31st. There are exemptions, there are regional variations. The threshold depends on the region. For example, in Catalonia, it's 500,000. In Madrid, it's 3 million. Okay. In Andalusia, there is a full 100% rebate, so you don't pay wealth tax. Okay. So really, there are big regional variations. And then there is the solidarity tax on large fortunes, which is a national tax that works the same as the wealth tax, but it is national, and the threshold is up from 3 million and up. Okay, and you also have allowances, and then you would pay a certain progressive tax depending on the net value of your assets. Now, Spain has double taxation agreements with the USA, UK, Canada, I think Australia as well, with many, many countries, which will help you avoid being taxed twice. And very important, regional rules vary significantly, and also your specific situation has a very big influence in how much taxes you're going to pay. So please consult a tax advisor. And of course, you can find recommended ones on Spainguru.es. And here, this is a slide just so that you understand how the tax brackets work. For 100K income, the first 12,450 euros, if you see on the table on the right, those first 12,450 euros pay 19% tax. Then the following 8,000 euros pay 24% tax. So really, when you make 100K euros, you will pay a median or an average, if you will, and the effective tax rate will be around 36%. This is a ballpark figure for information purposes only, so that you understand how the progressive tax rates work in Spain, because it applies to several kind of taxes. And here's a table where you can see for the different types of income, for example, 30,000 euros, 40, 50, 60, 70, and 100, what's the effective tax rate that you would pay on your income? 24% to 36%, okay? Ballpark figures, so you make an idea, so you have an idea of how those tax brackets work. So let's go back to non-lucrative visa documentation. This is a summary list. Please check your official requirements on your consulate and in BLS office. But let's go one by one now, and then we're going to go in depth into the most important ones. First, they will ask you where you're going to live in Spain. And normally you would just say the region in Spain, okay? For example, Seville, Valencia, Malaga, that would be it, okay? But some consulates have a very strict interpretation. They will want a rental contract in advance for at least 3 months even, and people comply with this, okay? But I recently interviewed Ainhoa Manero, and I asked her. Ainhoa Manero is a top immigration lawyer from Stern Abogados, who I highly recommend. She did my nationality back in 2020. I'm originally from Argentina. I became Spanish, and she answers 55 questions, and one of them is these crazy requirements from some consulates like Chicago, Boston. They ask you for a rental contract, and she says like, I never comply with this. Never comply with. Watch these videos. It's 2 videos, 2 parts, 20 minutes each, because you will get out with a lot of knowledge. I highly recommend it joining Spainguru's group because I'm always doing these kind of interviews. Now, addressing a country of residence. You will have to prove that you're a legal resident within the area that your consulate serves, what we mentioned before. Prove sufficient financial means to support yourself and dependents, if you bring some dependents with you, like spouse or couple or children, without working. Have comprehensive health insurance from a company authorized to operate in Spain. Has to be a compliant policy. Or if you're a UK retiree, you could potentially use the S1 form to have access to the public healthcare in Spain, and that would replace the requirement to get a compliant LLB private health insurance. Clean criminal background check, medical certificate, has nothing to do with the health insurance, where you show and disclose that you are free of diseases that could have serious public health repercussions. If you bring spouse, you need to get new marriage certificate copies, Apostilles untranslated. Dependent children, also bring new birth certificates. And potentially, you will have to prove that you will not engage in any work or professional activities in Spain. Consulates are getting pretty, let's say, demanding with this. Potentially, you will also show a letter of intent. Not always, but in some consulates, it is a requirement. And sometimes also a declaration of non-employment, as we mentioned before, and photos, payments of fees, etc., etc. As I said, I recently published this video that I highly recommend you to watch. There you have the QR code. If you scan it with your mobile phone, it will send you directly there to the first one. And then we're going to go deeper into the most important requirements. Financial requirements 2025, the same as 2024. You have to show proof of sufficient funds. How much money you need to show, including savings and regular income. Main applicant is 400% of the IPREM index. IPREM 2024 or IPREM 2025 is the same. And dependents need to show 100% of the IPREM in 2024. Converted to euros, main applicant is 28,800 euros, and each dependent 7,200 euros. On the right, you have a table. For example, a couple would be the addition of those two. Main applicant 28.8K, couple, you add 7.2K, total for a couple is 36,000 euros. It can be savings and or passive income, typically pension withdrawals, potentially rental income, but be careful because rental income is not so much accepted. It is one of the questions that I asked to Ainhoa Manero because many consulates consider that people can stop paying you very easily. It's not like a pension. Dividends, etc., etc. You will have to show bank statements and documentation from your bank wherever you have the money or you receive the income. Some consulates will also ask for tax returns, especially if you go with dependents. You will need, and I say double, the amount for the renewal. It's not really that you need double the amount because you need to prove that you will be financially independent for the following 2 years, which is the time period in which the renewal works. So really, you need to show double the amount of money, but in double the amount of time. So we're going to look at a case study. So you see how we calculate that because it depends if you have savings or if you have a combination of saving and income, passive income, etc. And there are strong regional variations for this double amount. Now, let's go back. What is the IPREM index? The IPREM index is the base from which we calculate the financial requirements for the non-lucrative visa and several other things. It hasn't changed in the last 2 years. 2023 and 2024 stay the same in 2025, but it could change next year. It depends on having political agreement. This year, there is no political agreement about the budget of Spain, the general budget of the country, and this is where they change the IPREM, but it could change. And generally, as you can see, the progression, it goes up. And when you have to renew, you will have to comply with the new IPREM. So it could go from 28.8K to 31.2K easily for your next renewal, something you have to budget accordingly. $1 million question, can I work remotely for non-Spanish companies? I underline remotely for non-Spanish companies. And again, I ask top immigration expert, Ainhoa Manero, about this, and she says, yes, you can. Definitely you can. Under the non-lucrative visa, you can. Okay, because it's a gray area, and there is a Supreme Court ruling that actually went through this and said that you actually can do it because the law is not very clear about working remotely. What you cannot do is to work in Spain for Spanish companies, okay? But please don't take my word for it. Watch the interview and listen to a lawyer saying this. And I personally know a lot of people under non-lucrative visa working remotely. They pay their taxes to the Spanish tax authorities. They have no problem renewing their non-lucrative visa because there is no communication between immigration and tax authorities. Of course, they need to comply with the financial requirements without adding active income. They have to have the savings or the passive income to comply with the NLV requirements for renewal. And they don't pay social security, but they have their private health insurances, and they live happily in Spain with this situation. Of course, now we have something called the digital nomad visa or teleworkers visa that may be more suitable and is more suitable for remote work. But back in the day, this didn't exist, and this is a situation that is happening. And of course, I'm not recommending you to do it. This is the legal analysis of the situation, okay? And definitely, if you disclose to any consulate that you plan to work or you are working, okay, in any situation, you will be denied ipso facto, okay? So don't take my word wrong. I'm not advising you to do anything, but just so that you understand the legal gray area for this situation under the non-lucrative visa. And to give you an example as well, how crazy the differences are between the different consulates, Edinburgh permits to work under certain circumstances, and specifically this person in the Spanish non-lucrative visa Facebook group got the non-lucrative visa accepted. They work at an oil rig in the Northern Sea, and they can travel back and forth 15 days in the UK, in Scotland, and 15 days in Spain. The family is under the non-lucrative visa, they're under non-lucrative visa, and this is official, okay? And also I know Manero tells me in this interview that she has gotten non-lucrative visa for example, airplane pilots, okay, who work somewhere else in another country, and basically they are not working in Spain. They have absolutely no impact in the Spanish economy, and they got the non-lucrative visas granted, okay? So this is something also to have in mind. Of course, if you're in this situation, I highly recommend you go with a legal expert so that everything is framed the right way for getting your non-lucrative visa granted. Now let's go through the private health insurance requirement. In order to be compliant, the insurance has certain conditions. First, it can have copayments and reimbursements. And there is a star next to reimbursements because several consulates also state that it shouldn't have reimbursements. For example, Houston, okay? And I say this, I underline that reimbursement is a very tricky one because there's a health insurance out there that a lot of people, I don't know, a few people that I heard are thinking about choosing that has reimbursements, okay? And they're risking denial. If the official reviewing the specifics of that health insurance check and that they see that it has reimbursements, they could have a denial. So be careful with that your health insurance doesn't have reimbursements. What's the difference between copayment and reimbursement? Copayment is your insurance will pay only half of the invoice. If you go to see a doctor, you will have to pay out of your pocket the other half. And reimbursement is your health insurance pays 100% of it, but you will have to pay out of your pocket for the doctor visit, and then you will get your money back through a reimbursement. None of this is acceptable. No waiting period, so you have to be covered from moment zero, from the moment you set your foot in Spain, and full coverage, both geographical and the different medical disciplines. Okay, and I added a star there because it has nuances. We'll talk about that. Normally, in 99% of cases, a yearly payment in advance is needed, especially if you don't have a Spanish bank account. If you happen to have a Spanish bank account, potentially you could pay monthly, but if you don't have it, it's normally a yearly payment in advance because the health insurance will need that payment in order to issue your certificate of coverage in Spanish. That is a necessary document for the application of this visa. That has a very specific wording, and that it has to it has to have a very specific format in order to be accepted by the consulate. Frequently asked questions: are my medicines covered? With a private health insurance, you have to pay retail price for your medicines. What should be the health insurance start date? Normally, it should be close to your intended date of entry into Spain. If you plan to enter on July 15th, if it starts on July 1st, should be accepted. Some people say, it has to be valid or started at the time of the appointment. And some lawyers recommend that. I personally am not sure that that's the right or correct way to do it, especially because sometimes your intended date is further in the future and you will not get covered at the end of the year that you require to be covered. And some consulates have had problems with that. And some people provide the document saying that, oh, it's automatically renewed and it's all good, but some consulates also post problems with this documentation. So this is my take on that. Are there health insurance for older than 75 years of age? Yes, unfortunately, not so many, and they're quite expensive. But yes, you can find compliant NLVs for 75 plus. What if I have pre-existing conditions? And with this question, I'm going to link to the full coverage condition. These are the nuances. So it depends on the severity of your pre-existing conditions and what pre-existing conditions you have. For example, if you have had cancer in the last 5 years, potentially you will not get coverage, okay, unfortunately. But if you have it more than 5 years ago and it's in remission, you will get it, okay? But potentially you're not going to get covered, but you're going to get a compliant NLV that can issue the certificate of coverage in Spanish, excluding those conditions, but the NLV health insurance will be enough for you to be approved for the non-lucrative visa, okay? If you have, for example, less severe pre-existing conditions like high blood pressure, stuff like that, usually you will just get an exclusion on those. But all the companies, or most of the companies, will cover you and will be able to issue the certificate of coverage in Spanish needed for being approved. This is the situation. Can I pay into the Spanish public system? Yes. After 1 year of residence in Spain, you can join the Convenio Especial, it's called, and you can get access to public healthcare system. You pay 60 euros per month if you're younger than 65, 157 euros per month if you're older than 65 years of age. And in Catalonia, I understand that this is for free, and even you don't have to wait for 1 year of residence, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Can I use my current health insurance from the UK and USA? Short answer is yes, if it's compliant with NLV requirements, yes. The long answer is I highly not recommend it. Use a Spanish company, use a broker or an exclusive agent that is used to sell these compliant policies, because there's many blogs you can find on the road if you use your local or origin health insurance. Like, for example, certificates of coverage is not in Spanish. You have to swan translate it. It won't have the right wording. It may be considered to be a travel insurance, and so many other things that the official reviewing your papers could find problematic. So my long answer is I highly don't recommend it. Go with people who are used to your specific use case, because usually these health insurances are also very affordable to what you are used to pay in the USA, for example, right? Can I apply with a UK S1 form if I'm a UK retiree? Yes. Do I need a Spanish bank account? No, you don't need it, okay? But if you don't have a Spanish bank account, you would normally have to pay a full year in advance. And if that is a deal breaker with the person you're talking when you're hiring a health insurance, that would be a red flag in my opinion, because everyone who is in the sector selling NLV compliant health insurances give you, of course, the possibility to pay from your bank account in your local country. Okay, it would be crazy that you have to have a Spanish bank account even before arriving to the country. Can I pay on a monthly basis? As I said, normally not, unless you have a Spanish bank account. Can there be reimbursements? As I said, 99% no. I strongly disadvise it. Will I get a refund if I'm denied? A lot of people ask this. Will I get a refund? And they ask in the community. Well, the important thing that you have to do is talk to your broker. Make sure to read your specific conditions and read the cancellation clause very clearly. Ask your questions. What happens if the visa is denied? Okay. Many companies, they have different types of refund clauses. Some of them will refund 100%, no questions asked. Some others will require that your visa is denied. Some others are required that your visa is denied because of the health insurance and no other reason. Okay. Some others will not refund you in full. So make sure when you hire that you get a nice refund clause. Spainguru.es, I recommend an exclusive agent that will give you a compliant health insurance with ADES, la top company in Spain, with a full refund clause. Always check this because everything can change anytime. I'm not the person selling this health insurance, but I make sure that we're at Spainguru, we're offering the most advantageous policies that are compliant for NLV. And there you have the largest Spanish health insurance companies. As I said, ADESLAS is the top one in terms of size for sure. ASA, Sanitas, Asisa, Salus, AXA, DECA, UBECA, SER, MAFRE. Sounds like a tongue twister, probably to you, and a little bit to me too. And as you can see here, just if size matters, ADESLAS is the top one, is as big as adding Sanitas and Asisa, the second and the third one, in terms of amount of policies in Spain. About 26% of the population in Spain has private health insurance. I personally have both. I have access to public healthcare system because I pay Social Security with this business, and I have access, and I have private health insurance. So I have the best of both worlds. I highly recommend you having both if you can. Medical certificate, as I said, this has nothing to do with the health insurance. It is a paper that is issued by a doctor in which it says that you don't have infectious diseases as per a protocol of 2005. This certificate has a 3-month validity, and I highly recommend you using a template provided by your consulate that would look something like that, as you can see on the right. And if you can find a template that is both in English and Spanish, it would be the best. Make sure that the doctor signs himself, not the front desk person, and signs both of them, not only the English one, also the Spanish one. If it doesn't sound the Spanish one, you will have to sworn translate it, okay? And if you only get the template in English, you have to sworn translate it from English to Spanish. This is in any country. Now, very important, this doesn't apply in the US or Canada, but in the UK, you have to also get an apostille. This is very important. For that, the doctor that is signing the UK medical certificate has to be FCDO registered. It takes 24 hours only for the doctor to register. It can be done online. It's very easy. Some doctors choose to do it if you ask them, okay? But make sure that that happens because some doctors don't want to do it. And then you have the surprise that you cannot apostille his or her signature. On Spainguru, you can find online services like ZoomDoc with a discount that only use FCDO registered doctors, and everything is done online. Okay, and if you want to use a Spanish doctor, which has several advantages, for example, it comes in Spanish and it doesn't have to be in apostille, it doesn't have to be sworn translated, okay, and everything is done online, and you can find a Spanish doctor on Spanguru.es. But some consulates have the strict requirement that is nowhere in the law or the regulations, asking people to be physically in Spain at the time of issuance of the certificate. Okay, this is the case of Manchester, Lisbon, and San Francisco. Okay, as of today, as far as I know and understand, but for example, London and Edinburgh are accepting it, or Miami, for example, in the USA, Singapore, so many. So if you need to use a Spanish doctor or you want to use one, go on Spainguru, fill the form. You will tell the doctor what consulate you're applying from, and the doctor will tell you exactly if it's widely accepted in that consulate or not. Frequently asked question. My doctor won't sign the medical certificate template. What can I do? Or also people say they want to do blood tests, urine tests for this. Find another doctor. If you're in the US, sometimes the emergency centers can sign this certificate. Sometimes. My doctor is not FCDO registered. Is this certificate valid in the UK? No, because you cannot apostille it. Okay, make sure that the doctor is registered. How do I know the Spanish doctor certificate is accepted at my consulate? Write directly to the doctor by filling the form on Spainguru.es. The doctor will answer you straight away. And here's a small table where you can see the differences between the countries. As you can see, in the USA, Canada, you don't need apostille. In Spain, doesn't need apostille, but in the UK, you need the apostille. And always sworn translated if it's not in Spanish, and or the doctor has not signed the Spanish part. That sometimes they don't want to sign it because they don't understand Spanish, and they don't want to sign something they don't understand. Now let's go to clean criminal background check. The document that takes normally the longest to obtain, both in the UK and in the US. It must be squeaky clean during the last 5 years. Nothing. The ACRO in the UK must be apostille and sworn translated, has a 6-month validity. Always check with your consulate, that can be mistaken. FBI background check requires a federal apostille and a sworn translation, and usually has, depending on the consulate, a 3 to 6 month validity. Always check with your consulate and BLS office. Frequently asked question. I am still eligible with records on my background check. Depends on the how serious they are. If you have a misdemeanor, like driving under the influence, a smoking pot 25 years ago in a university entrance door, there's usually no problems, okay? But if you have something serious, conviction time, violent crimes, it will be a denial. If you have this kind of records, it's always advisable to work with a lawyer that have ways to provide the information, making sure that you're not going to be denied. Or if you're going to be denied, that you know it before applying. Am I still eligible with a no live trace? This is for the ACRO. Yes, you could be, but now lately the consulates are asking for a report from the ACRO office or police stating what is the record under the no live trace. Can I expedite the background check federal apostille in the US? It's not an expedited process proper, but there are ways to make it faster. At Spainguru, we have partnered with Monument Visa. You can find an expedite service. You go to Spanguru.es and you search for Apostilles services, and they have a walk-in service in Washington. They go directly walk in your papers in the office, and they can get it in very few days. Can I notarize the background check and use a state apostille instead? People have done that in the past, but now it's straight denial. Don't do it. You only use federal background check. Federal apostille. Where can I have my fingerprints taken in the US? At post offices, and you also have channelers, or you can get a form that where you can put your wet ink fingerprints and put them in an envelope and send it. What if my fingerprints are illegible? This is for the US. I can, if you send me an email to hello@spanguru.es, I can send you links to content that people comment on different solutions for that. And these are just tips for the criminal background check. For example, in the UK, it was taking around 3 weeks to arrive. Around that time, could take more or less. And in Canada, times went much shorter. There used to be a lot of problems with the apostille because Canada recently joined the Hague Apostille Convention, and it was taking like more than 4 months to get the apostille, and people were sending the documents abroad just to get the apostille. It was a total mess, but now this is solved, and the apostille is taking very little, like 10 business days. So this is great news for our Canadian friends. Now, let's talk about proof of not working. And normally, we know this visa, the non-lucrative visa, also as the retirement visa, because most of people choose Spain to retire, and they come under the non-lucrative visa. They have their passive income, and everything is very clear. But sometimes you are in working age, a concept that many consulates use, and it's very blurry, because I plan to work until I'm 90, of course. And they will scrutinize more your situation, especially if you decide to work until the very last moment, or you don't want to quit your job. If you're not sure the visa will be granted, of course. Now, if you're still working in the UK, the best you can do is to provide a P45 form. Okay. In the US, resignation letter, termination letter from the employer, both translated and notarized. If you're freelancers in the US, notarized affidavit promising not to work. In the UK, a letter from HMRC, an accountant stating having ceased trading and deregistered for self-employment. Now, going back to the frequently asked question, should I quit before I get the visa? This is a pretty blurry situation and depends very much on the consulate, unfortunately. But first, is renting out a property considered a job? Normally not, but size matters. If you have 30 properties that you are renting on vacational basis through Airbnb, it could be considered a business. If you are directly involved in the operations, it could be considered active income. So depending on what you have, if you want to be on the safe side, maybe you want to hire a property manager and just get the fruits of that work and make sure that it's not considered a business. Is investing in stocks considered active income? Normally not. Can I volunteer while on an NLV? Yes, you can, but don't get paid. Or don't get paid for your trips or lunches or anything. You have to do it fully for free if you work in Spain as a volunteer. Now, as I said, working until the very last moment depends a lot on the consulates. I'm going to just quote Spainguru community members so that you understand the situation. So a member says, a P45 for the UK consulates. A P45 is one way, but so is better. A letter from your employer stating that you have resigned and will leave on a certain date. And then someone else says, looks like it's a bit of a potluck if they accept a letter from HR department in place of a P45, if working to the last minute. And today I published a piece of content for UK consulates. And for example, Manchester was more strict. Edinburgh was very flexible. London, it was 50-50. So if you're in this situation, maybe going with a lawyer could potentially be a safe way to do it. Because this was one of the questions that I asked Ainhoa Manero as well about working. And there are ways to make sure that this happens and that you can work until the visa is granted. Okay, but if you do it alone and you don't know the legal situation, it could be very stressful if the BLS office says no to, let's say, to a promise of stopping work. For example, Leslie Hutchins was asking in one of the groups, is it possible to take an employer's letter to BLS London to give a resignation date? And someone said they did this in Manchester, okay, but it was not clear in London. Check today's post about this if you want to know more for UK consulates. But in the US, they are much more welcoming to this situation. It is more common that people work until the last moment, and they are included in the official requirements, let's say, or guidelines. And for example, the DC consulate says if the applicant is of working age and or employed, She can add a letter of termination from the employer stating that the applicant will no longer work for that company, or a sabbatical year acceptance letter from the employer. And Alice says at LA, the Los Angeles consulate will accept a notarized letter of intent, now BLS office, that states your plan on quitting upon obtaining the visa before leaving for Spain. So this is the situation about working. But as I said, and here we're going to quote a specific case that happened in Buenos Aires, the city where I'm from. A Venezuelan national applied for a non-lucrative visa and was denied the visa because he showed activity on his LinkedIn page. And this person went to court in Madrid, appealing this decision, and the court in Madrid said that the consulate was right and they denied the visa righteously. Okay, so be careful about showing work activity or potential activity post the granting of the visa. As I said, going with a lawyer that understands well the nuances of this is very important. Marriage, birth certificates, and non-married couples. Married couples need a valid and updated certificate that usually has a 6-month validity unless stated otherwise. So you need to get a new marriage certificate from the country where you married. And this could be crazy because if you married in Trinidad and Tobago, Cyprus is very common. South Africa, it is very difficult to get a marriage certificate, a new one, and you need to apostille by the authorities who issue it. So in that local country, sometimes this takes longer than the police check. Children also, the same situation, but with birth certificates. And for non-married couples, they can apply, but you have to prove that you are a couple. And for that, the best is showing you have different types of proof. You have strong and weak. The strong one is a legal partnership. But if you don't have a legal partnership, well, children together, joint accounts, joint rental contracts, but you are going from strong to weak proof, okay? And it will depend on the personal discretion of the official reviewing your submission. All these documents need to be apostilled in the country that issued them and sworn translated to Spanish. What about adult children and ascendants? Yes, you can bring them. Adult children are your children over 18 years old with no age limit. And also ascendants, your parents. They have to be financially dependent and part of the same family unit, so they can be married, okay, in the case of your children. And you have to prove that. We have mentioned sworn translation many, many times. What are sworn translators? Sworn translators are accredited by the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. No one else can accredit a sworn translation. Sworn translator. They pass a very difficult exam to become certified. Each sworn translator has a unique registration number. Their translations are accepted by all Spanish institutions, including consulates and BLS offices, of course. Translations are done remotely and signed with a legally valid e-signature, so no physical mail is needed. You send everything by mail and then you print out what they give you. Can I use any translator from the American Translator Association? And I say this because Miami Consulates has a link to this association on the requirements, and it's very, very misleading. This association has nothing to do with Spanish sworn translators, okay? If you want to find recommended sworn translators, affordable ones who make dozens of application documentation for non-lucrative visa, go to Spainguru.es. You will find very affordable and quick ones, okay? Very professional ones. Can a sworn translator work with several language pairs? No, they only work with one. For example, Spanish-English. How much do sworn translations cost? For the documents around the non-lucrative visa application is around 40 euros per page, but it will always depend on how urgently you need and how complex those documents are. If it's the typical documents for US, UK applicants, it's around 40 euros per page. What comes first, apostille, then sworn translation? Some people will say, doesn't matter. I will tell you, this was one of the questions that I asked Ainhoa Manero and Noelia Hernandez from Stern Abogados. To be on the safe side, translate also the apostille. They have denials because the apostille itself wasn't translated. Because of several technicalities, the best is to be on the safe side, translate the original document, and sworn translate as well the apostille. Of course, some people will say, oh, I was approved without translating the apostille, and I saved that translation. But if you want to be 100% sure that there is no friction in the process, do it. And here are more interviews that you can find on YouTube. I highly recommend you joining the Spainguru's YouTube channel and clicking on the bell button so you get your video. I think half of the videos are about non-lucrative visa, and every day I'm publishing new videos. And not only about non-lucrative visa, but about moving to Spain, services, climate, different cities, so many different things that I'm publishing on Spainguru that I'm sure could be useful for you. And it's, of course, absolutely free. And if you think that I'm adding value with information sharing today, please leave a Trustpilot review. There on the top, you have a green bar and a red button that will lead you to Trustpilot. And it takes you only 5 seconds of your time to leave a nice review there. And it would mean the world to me if you did it. And I remind you, there's a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. Make sure to ask your questions and make sure to add a question mark at the end of your question so I can easily see it. Now, let's continue. During the application process, all family members must apply, okay? And an in-person application and or pickup may be needed, depending on the consulate BLS office. Some consulates are only by mail, okay? But if they work with BLS office, there is an in-person appointment. But for example, Panama is by mail. San Francisco used to be by mail only. Houston used to be by mail, but now they work with BLS. Some consulates use a combination or give you the option, so email or in person. NLV, and this is important, will grant you normally, there are exceptions, 90-day window to arrive to Spain. There is a visa validity window in which you need to enter Spain within that window of time. Common mistakes to avoid: not checking specific consulate and BLS office requirements, both in English and in Spanish, both of them. Also in Spanish, check them too. Wrong or expired documents. There are many documents that have a validity period. Make sure they are valid at the time of application. Okay. And recently someone reported in BLS San Francisco that their medical certificate was in their last week of validity, of their 3 months validity, and it was rejected by BLS office because they said that when they were resending the documentation to the consulate, that was going to be expired when the consulate received it. So that's mind-boggling because it was still valid when they submitted, but apparently not only it has to be valid, but also as fresh as possible, okay, at the beginning of the validity period. Of course, a lawyer will fight that till the end of the world because it makes absolutely no sense. But I'm telling you what we are getting from our loved Spainguru community members that unfortunately get this kind of hurdles when they apply. Wrong or expired documents, as we said. Wrong chronology. People who applied for the police check, thinking that it was the hardest one and longest one to obtain, but actually got married in Cyprus and didn't know that the marriage certificate was going to take even longer to obtain. Wrong health insurance. This is, of course, very, very common. Make sure that you work with someone who is used and recommended, offering you NLV compliant health insurance policy. Or if you say that you plan to work or not showing enough proof, if you are young enough to apply for the non-lucrative visa and the consulate official has some doubt that you may engage in work activities, you could be denied. So be careful with that. Timing. How much in advance should I start preparing before moving to Spain? Usually in the US and Canada, it takes longer. And this is from decision phase. Now, imagine that you decide today to go to Spain. When do you intend to move to Spain? In 6 months. Okay, then you should start, okay? Checking with tax advisors, gathering information. And then in the UK, it will be a little bit shorter period, 4 to 5 months. Most consulates retain passports during processing, something to have in mind. US applicants can get a second passport quite easily if you plan to travel. And BLS may allow UK applicants to keep theirs, but you have to make a strong case. And it is very difficult to get a second passport in the UK, or impossible, because they have very strict conditions to give you a second passport in the UK, and applying for a Spanish visa is not one of those conditions. Third, prepaid envelopes versus in-person visits to pick up passport. Sometimes you have to consider that you need to go in person, even with your full family, to receive all your passport with your visas. Okay, for example, that is the case of US consulates sometimes. Or maybe you prepay the envelopes and you receive them at home. This is the case of UK consulates most of the times. How long does the process take? Document preparation, 2 to 3 months. Attending appointment on the 3rd month. Wait for approval, 2 months approximately. Average, it can take less, it can take longer. And maximum 3, this is the official time in which the consulates have to give you an answer about your process, but they may take longer. 10 days period if clarifications or extra documentations are asked by the consulate or BLS office. So make sure to understand, if you know that some of the documents may not be good and you could potentially be rejected, start getting it, okay, in case they ask you to submit it later on, because then the window of opportunity will be very short. You can choose a visa start date within a 90-day window from time window from the application date. We're going to look at that. So normally, if you apply today, you can choose let's say, to move to Spain in the next, like the visa start date, in the next 90 days, you can choose a date around there, but it is not scientific, this rule. Officially, once you enter Spain, you will have 30 days to obtain your tarjeta de identidad extranjero. the residency card with your photo, that will be valid for 1 year before you have to renew your Spanish non-lucrative residence in this case. Timing. A member said, you can ask for the visa to be valid for up to 3 months in advance. However, the difficulty I found was finding a health insurance company who would work that far out, as most only do 2, and that was in July. Now most do only 1 month. So is this very on the limit when to hire the health insurance? But the recommended exclusive agent of Adeslas, recommended by Spainguru, can actually delay the start date of your health insurance a lot, many months in advance if necessary. It gives you this flexibility. So also something to have in mind depending on your specific situation. Going into a more visual slide, how these dates look like in the, let's say, in time. First, submission date, letter A. You submit your paperwork, normally at an appointment at BLS office, and then you can choose a start date when you submit for your visa. Imagine you choose date B, letter B, right? And the consulate grants you the visa before that and says, fine, we're going to make you happy. Your start date of your visa is the date you chose, letter B. So the date of your visa starts on letter B. You have 90 days from that date to enter Spain. Let's say that you choose to enter Spain in letter C, just before those 90 days of visa validity period end. Once you enter Spain, you have 30 days, 1 month officially to get your TIE card, Tarjeta de Identidad Extranjero, or residency card. And 1 year after your visa, your residence ends, you have to renew. When you have to renew? Well, you have a period of time that goes starting from 60 days before the expiration date of your residency card up to 90 days after expiration. So all the time during that period, you can renew your visa, but it is highly recommended to do it before expiration date. And you say, what does it count for expiration date? Well, normally, your residence starts on the day you enter Spain during your validity visa period. But of course, it's the police who writes that date, and errors could happen. So make sure that the date in your TIE is correct and that you know it. And this is also for information purposes only. This doesn't apply to every single consulate, so that you have an idea of how the application process looks in time. First, find your consulate. Make sure that you can apply at a specific consulate. Then check your specific consulate requirements. Check if your consulate uses BLS for the non-lucrative visa application. All UK consulates and some US consulates use BLS. Okay, recently Los Angeles and San Francisco started collaborating with BLS too. New York, I think, is the only one that doesn't use BLS at the moment for non-lucrative visa. Then collect necessary documents and check their validity. Normally, you will start with police checks like FBI background check, ACRO in the UK, but some consulates have crazy delay times to obtain appointments, okay, or BLS offices, and some people actually start trying to get appointments even before gathering the documents, okay? So have that in mind. Then obtain a medical certificate that has a 3-month validity. Then make sure to apostille the official documents, and in the UK, the medical certificates, and sworn translate all the documents from original language to Spanish. Sort out your private health insurance or obtain an S1 instead if you're a UK retiree and you want to go the public way. Book an appointment if you haven't done so yet with your consulate or BLS office. Attend that appointment when applicable, and then submit your papers, okay? Answer any clarification or the extra documentation requests, and wait for notification. It should be maximum officially 12 weeks. It can be less, it can be a bit more. Then collect your visa or receive it in your place and travel to Spain. Try to enter Spain within the visa validity period. Then once you arrive to Spain, try to obtain the padrón or certificado de empadronamiento, which is the registration of your address in the city hall of the city where you're living. And then once you got it, request a residency card or TIE card at a national police station or foreign office. Let's go back to taxes. And some of you may be thinking about selling your property before moving to Spain or even applying for the visa. The best way to avoid capital gains tax on the sale of your property or any sale of other assets in Spain, okay, so avoiding capital gains tax in Spain is moving to Spain in a different tax year, right? So make sure that you sell your property in a different tax year from which you move. Or if you sell during the same tax year, from January 1st to December 31st, make sure that you spend in Spain physically less than 183 days. Okay, for that you should move after July 2nd. Okay, there's only 182 days left in the year after July 2nd. Okay, so of course there are ways to mitigate the capital gains tax. For example, if you're older than 65, or if you reinvest the sales proceeds into a new property in Spain, etc., etc. But the best you can do is to just check the timing in which you sell and when you become a tax resident in Spain, or if you ever become a tax resident in Spain, because there's the possibility actually, and if you watch the video with the 55 frequently asked questions, to actually never become a tax resident in Spain and still be able to renew your non-lucrative visa for several years. Careful. Now, here's a visual way to put it. Timing to avoid capital gains tax in Spain on property sales. You sell during year one. So, for example, you sell your property 2024 and you move to Spain in 2025, or you sell your property in 2025 at the beginning, and you don't set foot in Spain until the 2nd of July. Okay, so making sure that you spend less than 192 days in Spain, thus not becoming a tax resident in 2025 when you sold your property. And you have so much content on Spainguru.es and in the YouTube channel that I highly recommend you watching and reading, because it's absolutely free, and knowledge, as we say in Spanish, doesn't take space in one's head. That probably sounds horrible in English, but yes, it's a saying in Spanish. Now, let's talk about after approval. Living in Spain on a non-lucrative visa. Excuse me. Arrival in Spain. There's two ways to arrive to Spain: from outside Schengen area or from inside Schengen area. From outside, you fly from New York to Madrid, for example, or from London to Madrid. Okay? UK, of course, is not Schengen. Then in that case, you will get a passport stamp. Or when the new ETIAS system, face control, they will scan your face, your iris, and I don't know what, still not in place, but that will count as passport stamp. But what happens if you enter Spain from within Schengen? For example, you fly to Paris and then you fly from Paris to Madrid. You will not get a Spanish stamp. You will get a French stamp, not on your visa, okay? Or you come to Spain by car from the UK. You cross the channel, enter France, you get a stamp in France, but then you cross to Spain from France, there's no one there. In that case, you need to get a declaración de entrada at a police station, and try to get it at the closest police station, either in the airport or the closest to the border, because not all the police stations are used to issuing this document. This is a one-pager document that you need to get stamped and signed, and that is your passport stamp in a way. It's your proof of entering Spain on a specific date, because you will need to show that when you get your TIE card later on. Otherwise, the police officer in front of you could get very cocky, get very demanding, and ask you even to go out of the Schengen area and come back to get a stamp on your visa. So always try to enter Spain within the visa validity period, and also make sure to have proof of your date of entry, either by a passport stamp or declaración de entrada if you enter from within Schengen. Okay. Now, recommendations: get a Spanish SIM card, because you're gonna get SMS when you do procedures. Open a non-resident bank account at the brick-and-mortar banks, Santander, BBVA, Sabadell, La Caixa, all those. They have non-resident bank accounts until you get the TIE card, because it can take months to get the TIE card, and you will have to pay invoices, you will have to pay utilities, your rent, so many things. Obtain a padrón or certificado de empadronamiento that has a 3-month validity period that will be, in 90% of cases, necessary to obtain your TIE card. And as I said, you have officially 30 days time limited to obtain your plastic residency card or TIE card once you enter Spain. Is the padrón strictly necessary to obtain the TIE? We're going to talk about that. There are no appointments to obtain the TIE. What should I do? So, in most police stations, they will ask you for a certificado de empadronamiento for your TIE. But first of all, we'll talk about the appointments. In practice, really, it will not be required to get an appointment to get your fingerprints taken to obtain the TIE card, because there are no appointments. And this is a chronic problem. Okay, it's been here for several years, more than 10 years, no appointments. And authorities are used that it will take you longer than 30 days to obtain an appointment at a police station or for an office to get your TIE card. So this actually, I'm quoting a lawyer who commented this in a group. Appointments can take up to 6 months without issue. The sooner is better, but no immediate rush. You can also try to obtain appointments within the same province where you're living, okay, and that will be also valid for your TIE card. Now, padrón for the NLV TIE. Really, officially, the requirement is that it's not needed for the first TIE card, okay? For the renewal, yes. And big police stations usually know this. For example, in Malaga, they don't require the big police station in Malaga, but the smaller ones may require it. What is official requirement is you have to show a proof of address, okay? And the padrón is the best proof of address, but not the only one. Potentially, you could use an Airbnb receipt, okay? You have to check beforehand if the police station where you got your TIE appointment will require a certificado de empadronamiento. And these lawyers successfully processed NLVs without padrón in several cities, Valencia, Gandía, Alcira, and as I mentioned also Malaga, the central police station. Renewal process. How and when to renew your non-lucrative visa. As I said, the first visa grants you a 1-year residence. You have to renew it before 60 days before the expiration day, and after and up to 90 days after the expiration. The first renewal, it will be for the year 2 and 3, okay? And the second renewal will be for years 4 and 5, right? As we said, the financial requirements for the renewals are twice as the original, okay? If savings, but if you are receiving passive recurrent income, then it is not really double the amount, okay? Because it will be double, but for the double length of time. We'll talk about that, okay? And the funds need to be available in the account when renewing. Depending on the region where you are, they will accept that the money or income is coming into a Spanish bank account or can be in an account outside of Spain. So make sure to also understand that. As I said, second renewal for year 4 and 5. And after 5 years, you could potentially go for the long-term residence, also known as permanent residence. Now, renewal process update and changes effective on May 20th, 2025. As you probably heard, the new reglamento, which is lower hierarchy than the main organic law, now requires that you stay a minimum 183 days per year in order to be able to renew the non-lucrative visa. Right now, people are staying less than 180 days because there's a Supreme Court ruling that erased this requirement and are staying on the non-lucrative visa without becoming tax residents in Spain, and still they are being able to renew. Now, with the new requirement, we're in the same situation. The situation is that a reglamento or bylaw or secondary lower hierarchy ruling cannot include this requirement because it goes against the freedom of movement right, which is a fundamental right that appears in the main law that defines the non-lucrative visa. Therefore, this requirement is not enforceable. And these are words of Ainhoa Manero of Stern Abogados. So after May 20th, nothing changes according to her. Okay, so this is, I'm repeating what a top immigration expert is saying. So there is the possibility to stay less than that period of time and still being able to renew. So we're going to be again in a legal ambiguity from May 20th, 2025. And thanks to this court ruling, it will be not enforceable, this minimum stay, according to Stern Manero of Ainhoa Manero of Stern Abogados. And you can watch also again this video where I asked this question, 55 frequently asked questions, and this is one of them. Now, renewal process, case study. We're going to talk about how we calculate the financial requirements for renewals. Total funding needed for a couple is 72,000 euros in 2 years. 36,000, as we said, for 1 year, but we need 36,000 times 2. Now, imagine that the main applicant has a 15,000 pension, 15,000 euros in 1 year, but in 2 years, biannually, it would be 30,000 euros. So that pension counts as 30,000 euros, really. So they need to complete with 42,000 euros. It could be additional savings in a bank account, okay? Or other types of passive income. Be careful about rental income because it's not widely accepted because it's considered to be an unsafe passive income, okay? So be careful with that. Documentation requirements, ongoing private medical insurance coverage or public healthcare system coverage, updated passport copies for both individuals, and certificado de empadronamiento, and other requirements. And you can do this fully online, and it's quite simple. You have to get a digital certificate, a digital signature, so you can sign documents online, official documents online. Time you need to spend in Spain to maintain your residence, obtain long-term residence, or Spanish citizenship. Now, as we said for NLV renewal, we're in legal ambiguity. The 193-day rule will probably not be fully enforceable, okay? This is not legal advice. Consult with a legal expert. You can find it on Spainguru.es because of a court ruling about this. Then, if you want to pursue the long-term residence after 5 years, which has a work permit, okay, you can work with the long-term residence. After 5 years of legal residence in Spain, you can apply for long-term residence. You have to apply for it. It's not automatic. And the biggest requirement is that you cannot be outside of Spain for more than 10 months, don't have to be consecutive, in the prior 5 years before you obtain it or you apply for it. If you don't comply with this, there is potentially the way of actually applying for a third renewal for years 6 and 7 of the non-lucrative visa, which is called extraordinary renewal. But not all regions allow it. For example, Galicia doesn't allow it, okay? But having that third renewal will potentially give you the option to comply with the minimum stay requirements for the long-term residence, which is, I highly recommend you going for it, because it gives you work permit, gives you can be less time outside of Spain once you have it, and it's much better, okay? You don't have to renew it that often as the non-lucrative visa, and of course the financial requirements just are very, very low compared to the non-lucrative visa. Nationality, if you want to go for the Spanish passport, the time that you cannot be outside of Spain generally is no more than 3 months outside of Spain each year prior to applying for a Spanish nationality. If you're an Ibero-American or ex-colony passport holder, you will be able to apply after 2 years of legal residence in Spain. Make sure to stay at least 9 months every year before applying. If you're a holder of long-term residence, you cannot be outside of EU more than 1 year or consecutively, or no more than 30 months in 5 years before applying for the Spanish passport. And here I speak about all that I told you about the minimum stay requirement for the non-lucrative visa renewal. It's very important that you understand when you get your non-lucrative visa, what are your long-term goals? Do you want to renew the non-lucrative visa? Yes. Do you want to go for the long-term residence? Yes. Well, then you have to stay longer in Spain, maximum 10 months outside of Spain in a period of 5 years. But that would be your threshold. You want to go for the Spanish citizenship, be careful, okay? So make sure to understand and decide on a strategy, your long-term strategy once you move to Spain, because different minimum stay periods can apply. Now, transition to work permit after 1 year. After 1 year with the non-lucrative residence, you could potentially start your own business, okay? And actually, you can buy a bar, for example, as long as you appoint someone who is in charge and you get the benefits of it without working in it. But if you want to start your own business and work in it after 1 year of non-lucrative residence, you can go to permiso de trabajo por cuenta propia. You have to present a business plan. It has to be accepted. You have to have some money in the bank account, etc. You have to present this business project. It has to be accepted, and it is fully doable. Some people say it's very difficult, very complicated. I know many people who've done it, okay? My wife has done it. My wife is American from Ohio. She was a student, and she moved to cuenta propia, starting her own business, and she did it. Now, you can also work as an employee, potentially, if you receive a job offer and someone is willing to sponsor you. This may be not that easy, but it is absolutely possible, okay? And potentially, these are not the only ways to go for a work permit. These are not the only ways. You can actually go for a work permit even before applying for a non-lucrative visa, but the requirements are more difficult than if you enter as non-lucrative residence and spend at least a year. It's going to be a bit easier, okay? The third one is you can transition to digital nomad visa, which is extremely, extremely controversial because the requirements for a digital nomad visa is that you have been working the previous 3 months remotely for non-Spanish companies, which of course goes against the non-lucrative visa spirit, but it is widely accepted by the immigration authorities, underlining the gray area of working remotely under a non-lucrative visa. So there has been successful cases of people who went from non-lucrative residence to digital nomad residence. And pathway to Spanish citizenship is after living in Spain, legally residence in Spain on a non-lucrative visa. For most passport holders or nationalities, the one that are in gray in the map is 10 years of legal residence before you can apply for Spanish citizenship. But if you are passport holder of any of the red countries, Ibero-American countries, countries with cultural ties to Spain, including Philippines, Andorra, Guinea Equatorial, Portugal, Brazil, and all the Latin American countries, after only 2 years of legal residence, you can apply for Spanish citizenship, even faster than a long-term residence. So definitely interesting. About Spainguru, for people who missed it, you can use Spainguru for professional help or for free resources. You can find immigration experts, tax advisors, financial planners, compliant health insurance, medical certificates for Spanish doctors, UK doctors, sworn translators, Apostilles services, and so many more services that you, I'm sure, will use if you decide to move to Spain. And here I have a bonus slide, a poll that I conducted on March 1st and 2nd. Did you use legal help for your non-lucrative visa. 128 votes, 51% said yes, and 49% said no, so 50-50 roughly. And for the people who use legal help, was it worth the investment? Around 80% said yes, 20% said no, or 77% said yes, 23% said no, 42 votes. So I would say that depends, of course, in your situation. And actually, today I published a article about this with an analysis of this. And of course, you can find these people who answer these polls. Not all of them worked with Spainguru's recommended professionals. I'm sure all the ones who worked with my recommended partners, 100% were happy and think that they are worth the investment. And someone was asking me, what's my email there? So let's connect. Jorge, I think it was. I saw on the right side. My email is hello@spanguru.es. I answer all the emails personally. Okay, maybe not immediately, maybe the following day if there's too many emails, but there I am, and you always will receive an answer. Facebook group, you have a dedicated Facebook group, 20,000 members, Spanish NLV, okay, that I highly recommend you to join today. And also, if you want to, if you're happier with Reddit, I recently opened a Reddit group as well that is growing. YouTube channel is for free. Join it today. 1 video per day. Half of them are about non-lucrative visa. Newsletter that I send every single week. You can opt out anytime, and it's for free, where I showcase the top 10 discussions in social media, my most watched video, and feature articles, etc., etc. And the content of this webinar is for information purposes only, and it's not legal advice. The requirements listed here are not official. Check your specific consulate requirements and BLS offices, both in English and Spanish. Now we're going to go to the Q&A session. We're going to go through every single question that you asked, and I'll do my best to answer it, or at least point you in the right direction. But if you haven't done it yet, please, the only thing I ask you in exchange for this webinar, 5 seconds of your time, leave a review on Trustpilot. On the top there, you have a button in the green bar, red button, will bring you to Trustpilot. Leave a review there if you think the information that I shared today is valuable. Now let's go to the questions. I plan to use Lexidi in Barcelona. Any thoughts? Stuart, thank you so much for joining today. It's one of my recommended partners. They're based in Barcelona. Absolutely, I recommend them. I recommend 3 legal partners. Okay, I have Sterna, CABR, both based in Madrid, but Sterna also in Valencia, and Lexidi, who are based in Barcelona. They're also based in Madrid and other European cities. All of them have very good reviews, and I only hear happy comments about them. Bruce, thank you for joining today. How to best to show having the funds available in an account? For how long before applying for the NLV? This is also called account seasoning. I have published a video and a blog post about account seasoning. Just search Spainguru account seasoning. Really depends on the consulate. They will ask you for 3 months bank statements, 6 months bank statements, 12 months bank statements. Okay, this is for the documentation. Now, what will consider the official? Okay, so that they think that you will have this money. No, we're selling a house and plan on using the proceeds for the LLB, but want to apply prior to the sale of the house. Okay. Also think about CGD liabilities that we already talked in this webinar. Be careful with the taxes. But coming back to, if you sell your house the day before applying to the NLB, it should be fine. You don't have to have that money for 12 months before applying to the NLB. You just explain in your letter of intent, you say, look at my financial statements. You will see that I receive a big amount of money. This is because I sold my house and I made $1 million or pounds, say, and I have this money because I just sold the house yesterday and it's my money, right? And you explain it and they will understand that now you have the money. So it's no problem, right? Another story is if someone gives you the money. If they give you the money, you have to be very, very careful and swear and explain that money will not have to be repaid, at least for the first year. But be careful because there the consulates are special, right? But that's not the question exactly. But yeah, if you understand me. Stuart, I will be making a joint application for me and my partner who is Thai, but with UK residence. So will my partner need a police certificate from Thailand as well? So, for example, digital nomad visa and non-lucrative visa go with different laws. So digital nomad visa, you need to provide certificates for 2 years of the countries where you were resident in the last 2 years. But in the non-lucrative visa, it's for the last 5 years. So if your partner was resident, I don't know, in Thailand or anywhere else in the last 5 years, they need to provide police certificates from all those countries for the last 5 years. Recently, someone was telling in the community about Dubai, for example. Dubai was impossible to get a police certificate or something like that, or impossible to obtain the apostille for it. And they have a specific arrangement that they could do, okay, in order to provide the police certificate from Dubai without apostille. So depending on the country, there's several things you can do. The best is also ask the community and your specific case, analyzing how easy it is. And be careful with documents validity, because the documents have a window of validity, okay, generally between 3 to 6 months. So be careful, because when you submit your paperwork, they need to be valid. When renewing the NLB, Ellie is asking, when renewing the NLB, if I have only savings to renew, can these savings be half in Spanish bank and half in a bank outside of Spain? As I said, that depends on the region. Join the community and ask, depending on where you're renewing. Stuart, any idea how long the wait from London consulate is? A lot of people are asking this. Wait for the appointments, or you already submitted? I don't know, but join the non-lucrative visa group and ask, because a lot of people are applying from London now, and they're all the time updating about timings. Stuart, as my passport is retained, can I travel on my second UK passport? If you have a second UK passport, yeah, I don't see why not. People say that obtaining a second passport is difficult. If you have it because you have already one, then you can, as far as I understand. This is not a Spanish rule, okay? This is the rules of UK. I'm not an expert in anything, and less about UK rules about using a second passport, okay? But if you have a second passport, I don't see why not. As I said, people report being very difficult to obtain a second UK passport, but many people have it because of different reasons, not applying for the Spanish visa. If you have it, then you could potentially use it. And also you can make the case at BLS office to retain your passport and maybe deliver it again once the visa is granted, so they can stick it to it. Jorge, would local consulates, in this case Miami, USA, accept a savings account showing a substantial balance covering many years of the required minimum amount to live in Spain? Yes. Yes. I don't see why not. Does the clock for 90-day visa starts if you start in one EU country and enter a different EU country? No. Not for the non-lucrative visa. You need to get a stamp from Spain. I mean, wait a second. The visa clock starts on the date of validity start. When you read your visa and your passport, there is a visa validity start. So whatever you do, the visa clock is ticking. You need to enter Spain during that visa validity window period, okay? Now, what you do outside that, let's say traveling inside Schengen, whatever, you are in Schengen as a tourist. So you have your 90 in a 180-day rule, okay? As long as your visa has not been validated by Spanish authorities. Thank you, Heli, for asking. Dave, is there a one-stop shop to get both apostille and translation done both at the same time? So for the UK, I recommend a private apostille service that also can do the sworn translations for you as well. And you have a discount on Spainguru. This is Hague Apostilles, and you get a £10 discount if you use my link on Spainguru. And if I think you select getting your sworn translation from English to Spanish, and they will do it. Or you can do it separately using, you can do your apostille service, private or not, and doing separately your sworn translation. And for that also you can use the recommended professionals on Spainguru. Thank you, Dave, for asking. Heli, the font changed. What would be the appropriate date to begin the application process for a non-lucrative visa? I know the required documents should be obtained within 90 days before the appointment with the Spanish consulate in Vienna. So I think I shared the different timings for US and UK. Gathering the documents depending on the difficulty of your documents usually takes 2 to 3 months, and the documents validity range from 3 to 6 months. So maybe starting gathering the documentation 3 months before, something like that, just to make sure that the visa validity period is open when you submit. This is for information purposes only, and it's not legal advice. make sure to do your calculations correctly and depending on your specific situation. Yes, what type of documents? Because if you ask me, if you were living in Thailand, Cyprus, and Guam in the last 5 years, and you need to get police checks from all those places, it could be difficult, no? So depending on how complex your situation is. Heli, which documents require an apostille, the originals or copies? So police check requires apostille. They're all originals, okay? You need to get a marriage certificate if you apply with your couple, and that has to be a new copy, a new original copy if you want, if you will, and it has to be apostilled by the country that issue it. If you're applying with dependents, if you're there, your children, then birth certificates, they need to be apostilled. If you're applying with a UK doctor medical certificate, it has to be apostilled. Okay. And I think that would be it. But always check the official requirements. Which documents need translated to Spanish? Some original documents are in German and others in English. So all the official documents, including the medical certificate that are not in Spanish, need to be sworn translated. So police check, marriage certificate if applicable, birth certificate if applicable, medical certificate. If you apply with a foreign health insurance, the certificate of coverage has to be in Spanish, etc. You have to read your consulate and BLS requirements page and make sure you are on the safe side. My wife has her own online psychotherapy practice, LLC single proprietor, but with American clients. Since her license is only valid there, should she apply for her own visa in advance, or could she do it later once she has started her business? This is a very, very technical question, and I'm afraid I'm not sure what the answer would be. My recommendation is that really you engage with a professional immigration expert and tax expert. You can find consultations, maybe a 45-minute consultation with one of them will give you a clear path and a strategy for your goal to move to Spain. Robert, we were married in Germany many years ago. Congratulations. Our marriage certificate is in 4 languages, including Spanish. Can you suggest the best way to obtain a valid new marriage certificate to comply with NLB requirements? We live in Georgia, USA. So you need to get in touch with the German authorities and request a new marriage certificate. Okay? Be careful with the validity. If they state that it is valid for only 3 months, it will only be valid for 3 months. If there is no validity period stated on the marriage certificate, then the BLS or consulate office will say the validity period. And if they don't say, then it is not clear. Maybe 6 months. Okay, so you're from Georgia. So if you're from Georgia, I think your consulate will be Miami. So it's BLS. Join the Facebook group, join the Reddit group, ask the community. Okay, other people who got married in Germany, what did they do? Or they need to get new documents from Germany, but you need to get a new marriage certificate to prove your relationship so you can apply as a couple and benefit from that. And then it comes in 4 languages. This is a tricky question. Sometimes they only have, if it's in Spanish, it should be enough. Okay, and if all the information there is in Spanish, potentially you will not need that sworn translation, but it's a very tricky question. I have not seen it, and I don't know what the official looking at it would actually think. I have no idea. Personally, I would sworn translate everything, that and the apostille too. And the apostille has to be from German authorities. So yeah. Robert, is the best way to begin the process to obtain an FBI background check to contact the local FBI agency here we live? I believe they can also do fingerprints. So I have an article on how you can obtain your FBI background check. Make sure to align the validity periods of all the official documents. But yeah, I think you can just send your fingerprints through a channeler or via or in a courier or post office. They can take your fingerprints, or you can send on an envelope, and then you receive it at home, and then you will have to send it for a federal apostille. You will scan it, you will sworn translate it, and you will also recommend it sworn translate the federal apostille as well. This will be the process. You can search Spainguru FBI background check, the different ways to recently published, like in the last month and a half, a way to obtain the FBI background check. But of course, there are official sources that tell you the exact procedure. Jeff and Elizabeth, my wife has US and Venezuelan passport. Congratulations. You can apply for the Spanish citizenship after 2 years of legal residency in Spain. The Venezuelan passport expired in 2020, but we should be accepted since it has been impossible to renew. I don't know. That's a very strange particular situation. sorry, you are in that situation. Her maiden name is on the Venezuelan passport. Is there any benefit to use the Venezuelan passport for NLV since the goal is to apply for Spanish citizenship? Yeah, definitely. It is better to use the American passport when you apply for NLV for several reasons. There could be some small tricky reasons, like for example, in the passport, Venezuelan passport, you have only one last name, or sorry, you have two last names, and in the American one, you have only one last name, or the married name, and they don't coincide. So if you apply for residency with the American one, and then you apply for Spanish citizenship with the other one, and there are mismatches, it can be a bit trickier, and it could be more friction and more headaches. So the best would be to apply with the American passport. But my understanding is they need to be valid when you apply. Unfortunately, I don't know the case of Venezuela, and if they get a special treatment because the situation makes it very difficult to get a renewed passport. But yeah, that would be my take on it. Potentially, you should consult with a legal expert. You can find on Spainguru.es, and I'm sure they are answering these questions every single week, because you are not the only one in this situation. A lot of Venezuelans coming to Spain with probably expired passports because of the situation in Venezuela. So I'm sure they can give you legal advice on that. And it is very, very important that you understand the strategy to do it. So you don't lose time. Okay, can be very costly errors if you don't understand exactly how to do it. Can you recommend a Spanish healthcare insurance company that accepts healthy adults older than 70 years? Yes, Robert, you can go on Spanguru, and work with our exclusive Apostilles agent, recommended Apostilles agent, Mr. Carlos Blanco, who is also an immigration lawyer and can tell and knows everything about the non-lucrative visa, and can help you also understanding when your insurance start date should be, can give you flexibility on when to start it, options for over 70 years, etc., etc. Amelia, is it okay if I had Spanish health insurance for a year already, renewed in March, and I've been in Spain a lot on tourist visa? Is it okay? Is it okay for what exactly? You need to have full compliant NLV coverage when you apply for the non-lucrative visa for the year in which you're going to be having the non-lucrative residence. That is the requirement. So I don't understand very well your situation now. So it would be very I wouldn't be so sure to tell you yes. No. My opinion, make sure that your health insurance complies with NLV and that the period in which you're covered matches the period for which you're going to get your non-lucrative visa for. Robert, Bruno, will your webinar address recommended tax lawyers? We can contact discuss our financial situation. They apply to Spanish income and wealth taxes. Yes, definitely. You can find many different tax experts on Spainguru. Just go on Spainguru.es, top menu consultations. The first one is immigration and the second one is taxes. And then you get one for Spanish filings, second one for US filings, for specialists in US filings and Spanish filings. Let's say for Spanish filings, but with a strong knowledge on the US. And the third one is for filings in the US as an expat. Okay. And the fourth one is a financial planning advisor. Okay. So you have all the different ways. Contact them, is absolutely free. Tell your situation, what you want, what you expect. Join my tax webinar if you haven't. Robert, I think you joined already. But basically, contact them and tell them what you need, and they will tell you what they can do, or refer you to some recommendation, or tell you, yeah, this is the quote and these are the services. Yes, definitely you can find everything on Spainguru.es. Should you begin healthcare insurance when you apply with the Spanish healthcare insurance company, or begin on the date of your appointment with the consulate, or the day you intend to arrive in Spain? Best option. My opinion, as I said, this is no legal advice. The best is to start your insurance the same month in which you intend to move to Spain. So, for example, if you apply today, March 19th, and you tell them, I intend to enter Spain in, I don't know, May 1st, the visa should start on May 1st. You should ask the health insurance to start on May 1st. That's my opinion. Some people say that their lawyer recommended to have a valid visa at the time of the appointment, but for me, it doesn't make too much sense, and it's actually a bit risky, because if you start it earlier, the earlier you also stop having coverage, and the official could say, oh, you have a window where you're lacking coverage here in the following year after you enter Spain. How is this works? And some people have had problems demonstrating that they get an automatic renewal. So yes, that's my take on it. Of course, all this is no legal advice. Jeff and Elizabeth, do US bank statements and tax returns need to be sworn translated? Also, tricky question. I mean, I wish I could tell you a definitive answer for this. A lot of people apply without doing any translation whatsoever of their statements, and they're successfully accepted. Some people actually get rejected because of this, depending on the consulate and depending on the official reviewing the documents. Some people choose to sworn translate only the summary pages because sworn translating everything is maybe too expensive. And some people sworn translate everything. For example, Ainhoa Manero answered this question. I asked this very same question to Ainhoa in this 55 frequently asked question video from this week. And she said, as Tanaboels, we sworn translate everything because they have had cases of rejections and they don't want to add any friction to the process. Jorge, Bruno, ¿cuál es tu email directo? hello@spanguru.es, my direct email. David, thank you for joining today and asking a question. I am retired and selling my property in the UK and I intend to move to a villa I already own in Spain. Sounds like a great plan. I have been diagnosed with cancer. Sorry to hear that. Will this cause problems gaining Spanish health insurance? I think I mentioned this before. If the cancer is in remission, I'm not like a health insurance broker, okay? I'm just repeating what I heard from brokers. If you have had cancer diagnosed in the last 5 years, then it could be that you cannot get coverage, unfortunately. If you have had it before, okay, so already 5 years have passed from the initial diagnosis and it's in remission, then you can get coverage, okay? But the best you can do is contacting with the different brokers who are experts in NLV compliant health insurances, and you are obliged, it's mandatory to disclose your pre-existing conditions. You tell them your situation, answer the medical questionnaire, and see what kind of coverage you get. So depending on when that happened and your current situation is, there are possibilities. Sue, how far back must I prove my savings have been in the bank since I will be selling my home after July 2nd and using that along with my social security from the US to prove income when first applying for the NLV? As I said, when you sell your home, it doesn't have to be in the bank for many months. And you can have it very recently and then apply for the NLV. As far as I understand, if you explain that, okay? It's a different story if you receive a gift. This is my take on it. And this is the answer that I got from Ainhoa Manero in the 55 Frequently Asked Questions interview. I highly, highly recommend you watching it. Jeff and Elizabeth, how is it to exit and return to Spain during temporary residency? So if you get a non-lucrative residence, it will say on the as long as your residence is valid, you can come out as many times and in as many times as you want. Do we show just residence card or do we need the passport you originally arrived on? You always, so the tier card is not a valid travel document. You need to always carry your passport together with your residency card if you're entering Spain. Always remember that there are no internal borders within the Schengen area as well. If you travel around there, there are exceptional controls, but there shouldn't be controls inside Schengen. Amelia, is it negative if the money comes from a gift from a parent? I'm not of retirement age and my only other income is rental present. Thank you. Very tricky. This is not the best, unfortunately, from what I heard. Watch the 55 frequently asked question video. We talk about rental income and we talk about money gift. There are some consulates, they don't like the money gifts either. Some consulates don't pose any problems. In any case, you need to present a declaration from the person who gifted you the money saying that you don't have to repay that money ever, or at least in the following year. You need to notarize this, etc., etc., etc. Okay, that's for sure. And rental income, it is a weak kind of income, unfortunately, for most consulates. So yeah, if you're in this situation, go with legal experts. Okay, recommended by Spanguru, best. Okay, because these questions, I'm sure they can tell you the best you can do for the consulate where you live, 100%. Robert, with an NLV, will we remain under the Schengen rule 90-day in a 180-day period while traveling to other Schengen countries? Yes, 100%. The non-lucrative visa, the Spanish non-lucrative visa is a residence permit for Spain, not for the whole Schengen area. So the 90 and 180-day counts. The thing is, if you travel from within the area, it is very hard to enforce how long you've been in other Schengen countries. But if you get out and in and out from the Schengen area, then there are strong records out there showing that you've been out. Of course, I'm not recommending anything, okay? You have to comply with the minimum stay requirements, especially for long-term residents, for Spanish passport, etc., which apply for Spain, not for Schengen area. Alex, and this is the last question right now. If you haven't asked anything, make sure to ask it now and make sure to add your question mark. In 2020, I got COVID way before vaccines were available. Spent 6 months in the hospital and was also intubed. My lungs were damaged, and although they are a lot better, I still have to use a portable oxygen machine. Will this be a problem with getting healthcare insurance? Very, very, very specific. I'm not an expert into pre-existing conditions, especially of this kind. And the best is that you engage with an experienced broker you can find on Spainguru.es, and I'm sure you get your questions answered by a professional. And I don't think I have any more questions. It's 1:51. Thank you so much, everyone, today for joining. I will send you a recording. Okay, it's 1 hour 53 minutes of video. I will send you the recording when it's ready to your emails. And thank you so much, as I said, for asking your questions. I am happy to answer any other question in the email, hello@spanguru.es. And as you know, this is absolutely free. The only thing I ask in exchange, if you want, if you can, if you have 5 seconds of your time, leave a Trustpilot review. You have a button right there on the top bar, top green bar, red button, and it would mean the world to me if I hear your nice comment out there and receive your love. Thank you so much, and I will be there for anything you need in your journey to come to Spain. I am releasing a new webinar about moving to Spain. It's a more general webinar about the whole project from vision to reality next week, and I invite you to join that webinar as well. This is more general, not so specific, obviously, but I'm sure it would be interesting for you if you're planning to move to Spain. Maybe you get some inspiration and information too from that webinar, and of course, you will receive a recording once I finish. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Stuart, Jeff, and everyone else. Take care and stay in touch. Goodbye.